Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. And joining with me, as always, is my trusty counterpart, technical advisor, and trusty assistant, Tony Tressel. How's it going, Tony?
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. And joining us on this episode, all the way from Winnipeg, Manitoba, is Mr. Rob Knight. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks, guys.
So is it becoming fall in Winnipeg as well?
Yeah. All the ash trees dropped all their leaves. Oaks are working on it, and elms still have a little bit, but it's getting there. But it's been nice, like 27 yesterday, and it's looking like 24 today. So it's shaping up to be a pretty nice working fall, hopefully.
Nice.
So
yeah, it's been similar here. This episode is going to be airing after probably the white stuff's around, so it can maybe take some of you back to autumn.
Well, I'm going fingers crossed. Maybe no snow till December, so we'll see.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Well, we there's one common theme with our podcast, and that is the question that we ask all our guests. And so we, without any further ado, if you would, Rob, please share with us the first time you recall from memory that you had a connection to a tree or trees.
So I thought about this one after I listened to a few podcasts, and I can't really think of anything where I was young and maybe I was walking through a forest, or I climbed a tree when I was young. I did a bunch of that. And even in my first multiple years of doing tree work, can't really think of a connection. And actually, the one that really kind of stood out was I'd completed my education degree, and I was actually sitting in a class, and I think it was my grade. I was on a term, like I didn't have a full-time position. Otherwise, if I did, I probably actually wouldn't be a tree guy right now. I'd still be a teacher. And I was teaching out in the River East Transcona School Division, and I was doing my grade 11 biology class. And they were working on something, and I was just staring out the window at this elm tree and just thinking, man, I would rather be in that tree right now. Like, these kids are working away, and all I'm thinking of, I'm like, I just want to go climb that tree and enjoy myself. And it was kind of funny. One of the students caught me looking out the window at this tree, and he goes, Mr. Knight, would you just rather, because they knew I did tree work as well.
Okay.
He goes, would you rather be out there climbing that tree right now? And I was like, no, not at all. No, I'm here. And I was like, wow, he caught me. I'm like, yeah, I would much rather be out there right now. I'm like, I love you guys, you're great, but like, no, I kind of realized, I thought after that like I enjoyed the teaching, and I had a great time doing it, and that summer I had multiple interviews for jobs, and I never got one, and I just thought, I'm not gonna sub again. I'm gonna try this on my own. And and that year I think it was 2010. I started Timberline Tree Service, and been doing it ever since. So, and it's been fantastic, But outside of that, like that was the first real time where I can think of that I was like, I really just want to be outdoors and in this tree right now. And yeah, so
that's fascinating. It makes me wonder how many teachers. I wonder if any of our listeners or teachers have been in that moment where they've been caught distracted in their own thoughts by an actual student.
Yeah.
And then only to deny it.
I had to. I couldn't be like, oh yeah, you got me. I just not here at all. That would be wrong to say. But it was funny. They knew that I loved to climb and do things like that, and they would try and half the time start climbing conversations and and just get me completely off track or talking about tree work, and And yeah, that was there. What a couple of the students on the left, I remember. I don't remember their names, but they would always ask me that, and I was like, after a while, I realized they were just getting me talking so that they wouldn't do any work.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and I'm like, you guys are just distracting me in an effort to like not have to do your work. I'm like, okay, that's enough of this. Yeah, let's do this. So yeah,
I think everyone in their career as a student has found teachers that they can easily distract. And not only does it get rid of work, but often I think they actually find it more enjoyable than the subject, so they're happy to distract.
well, yeah, yeah. I mean, it wasn't hard to get me excited about talking about climate or, whether it's, mountains or trees or whatever. I was, yeah, let's talk about that. That sounds great.
So, how did you make your foray into, you're getting your teaching degree and you successfully complete that, but where did your tree climbing kind of start, or how did that happen?
So back in the day, I think I was probably about 25. So I used to work at the insect control branch in Winnipeg.
Okay.
Um, and I was on the tech side, and Chris Olson,
Yeah, yeah.
who owns TNT Tree. He bought that from because he worked at the insect control branch as well,
Okay.
and him and like Dylan bought TNT Tree from Doug, I guess at the time, who was also in the insect control branch, and he would go around, and it was just originally like a tree banding company and spraying.
Okay.
So just basically more plant health care, and so they had bought that and operated it for several years, just doing the plant healthcare stuff. And one day, Chris asked me because he knew I climbed. He said, "You want to try climbing trees for money?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" I'm like, "Of course I do." I'm like, "I get to go climbing every day and get paid." And so that's how it started. I mean, it's definitely come a long way. I think the first, like, I'd never used a chainsaw. The first tree I cut down was like with like a bow saw. Like, I didn't even have like a hand saw. If you were the homeowner, like, you would have been like, "I'm going to get my shovel," and you just start digging a hole because you're going to bury me in like 5 minutes. It was just, yeah, but everybody starts somewhere, right? And whenever I drive by somebody doing that nowadays, I don't, I try not to laugh, because I'm like, I was right there, ages ago. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I'm 47 now, so that was like 22 years ago ish. I don't even know exactly when it was. I don't think I could ever figure it out. So, but yeah, and I worked with Chris for like 5 years until I ended up kind of going back, and then I did the education thing. And then when that didn't work out, I decided I wanted to do it on my own. So,
So,
yeah.
so climbing, then you obviously had climbing experience and he knew that, but that was, was it mountain, rock, but like,
I mainly had done like mountaineering and most of the ice climbing at the time. My mountaineering was earlier, and I enjoyed that. But I tended to realize if you meet any mountaineers, it's really about suffering, and like it's a super long walk, and how well you can just suffer. Like, you're out there for days walking and camping, and you're uncomfortable and no shower and just and that was, I enjoyed it, but like it wasn't. We ended up getting to do one of a more technical side on a mountain, and I found that I was like, wow, I really enjoy this technical stuff as opposed to the long walk. And then that's when I started doing ice climbing, which is just just a vertical ice wall. And I don't know why I rock climb more now, but not as much as I like back in the day. It was all ice in the summer, and then I would just do trees in the summer, and I'd never take any time to go rock climbing. And now I try and get on one rock climbing like caving trip a year, and then mainly it's my most of my focus is on ice climbing versus the
well, I
rock.
mean, being in Winterpeg, there's a good season for ice.
Well, there's no
No,
mountains here though.
so
So, I mean, we have our local tower here, and in St. Boniface. There's been a tower here since like 1996, and I've been climbing there since like early 2000s. And I use that as like the training facility, and just go there and get my laps in an effort to go on my trips that I go on, because I usually go out. I come out your way always.
Right.
At least I'm going there for 20 years, at least once a year, usually several times to climb. And since then I've actually like completed most of all the big climbs out there that I want to do, and now I'm looking at other places like Quebec. I've been going to Wyoming lately. That's a great place. I mean, I can say it here because I'm like, um, well, the part of the reason why I'm like kind of shifting away from Alberta is there's so many climbers
Right.
now, and I'm like, it's great that ice climbing is getting popular, but like, man, you got to get up like insanely early to go climbing now. It's like to get on a popular climb 4 in the morning. So, and if you're not there by 6, somebody's beat you. So,
Yeah, you can't really
uh,
like follow a guy on ice, can you? That's probably not why.
no, because ice is flying down the climb, and you'll get smoked in the head and get hurt really
Yeah.
bad. So getting up, you go there for a week, and if you get up like at 4 in the morning, like 3 or 4 days in a row, like you're bonked by the fourth day, and it also just gets tiring. You're like, man, I just like to sleep in and go get like a good breakfast. And back in the day, you could do that when there wasn't as many ice climbers, and now it's just bonkers, tons and tons of people. And you go to Wyoming though, and you go to Cody, Wyoming, like you can get up at like 9 o'clock and drive down to the ice climbs, and no one's there. It's awesome. It's awesome. But only 500,000 people live in
Yeah.
Wyoming total. So like, and you go to Cody, it's like in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, like who would go there in the winter? Just me and a friend and maybe like 5 other people. So, and they've got a massive concentration of ice climbs. It's awesome.
Frozen
So,
waterfalls, eh?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah.
there's a lot of popular places here that people do ice climbing. I know that, but I didn't think about the fact that there'd be an increase in density of even ice climbers, because I do know, what, and since it seems like since COVID, and even during COVID is when it really started, that I mean, it's like I remember doing Highwood Pass, which is a very simple climb, but it's a beautiful little thing. It's a hike, right? But the last time, well, we did it once. Everyone was getting out, and it would have been in 2000, or sorry, 2020. It was in COVID, right? But it was like being at the mall. Like there were so many people, and the parking lot was completely overloaded. Cars along the side of the road. It was just the weirdest thing I never seen. And it's continued that way. Like Yamnuska, which is a popular day kind of trip, is just like you cannot look up and down the trail and not see a lot of people. It used to be you might see one or two groups maybe, and there'd be oftentimes you wouldn't see anybody. And now, and I guess it's just population density, or do you think that people just go more outdoors? And did COVID have something to do with that, do you think?
I just think it's getting more popular over time. I've just noticed, more and more people are getting interested in being outdoors and doing things, and it just seems to be getting more popular. That's all, and that's a good thing. Like I enjoy it, and why shouldn't everybody else? And I try not to like be get upset about it, because I'm like, well, it's not fair that I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there because there's too many people. Like, come on, that's. But I'm like, I want to climb, and I don't live there, so when I go there, I'm like, okay, I got a 7 to 10 day window where I want to do these climbs. And that's the other thing too, is like I feel like I'm getting more picky as I get older, because I've climbed all the other climbs, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go do that because I've done that five
Right.
times. So I think that's part of it. So just going to a new area is better.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but even I went to this last summer. We went out and we climbed Grand Sentinel, and you had to go to Moraine
Uh-huh.
Lake to start. And I went there, I mean, like probably 20 years ago, and you could drive there. And you can't drive there now. You have to take a
Yeah, I know
bus.
it's weird.
I'm like, and it's insane. And he told me like it's like 10 to 20,000 people go there a
Yeah,
day. And I was just like, what?
yeah.
And Grant, we got the early bus because we took the 4 a.m. bus so we could make sure that we, because it was like a 3 hour hike to get to the Grand Sentinel to climb it. And so we were on the 4 a.m. bus, but there was still like 6 buses that went there at 4
Wow.
a.m. And we were the only climbers, thank God, because some guy had said he'd seen like parties just lined up to climb this thing. It's a big, huge like spire. If you Google a picture of it, and but we were the only ones there, and another party showed up later in the afternoon. But I couldn't believe it. There was like 6 buses of people going there at 4 in the morning, and they weren't there to climb. I'm like, why would you be here? Like, I'm like, the next sunset bus comes a little bit later. I'm like, if you're catching the sunset, I'm like, you can still sleep until like 5 or whatever.
The
Crazy,
sunrise, you mean?
just crazy. Just yeah, like you talk about going to the mall. This is like the mall on
Yeah.
steroids.
Well,
Like with people
yeah,
there, just
exactly.
like yeah, you can't get a shot of the lake without 100 people in it anymore. So
Yeah, I know.
bonkers. Yeah.
I agree. The photos, I was like, holy moly! Like it looks like I'm in a park somewhere. And um,
Yeah.
when you do an ice, it's one thing I have not done, and I'm curious about the end. Like, obviously, you climb up. Is it a rappel down? You obviously aren't hiking a ridge back down or anything like that. Or do you climb
Um,
down, or what do you do?
no, it's various. I mean, sometimes there's walk-offs,
Okay.
but most of the time it's a rappel back down.
Okay.
So and either it's from, if it's a popular climb, it'll be bolted stations where you just feed the rope through, or if it's not, maybe if it's a big face, you make a Balakovs and you just rappel off of those. So for those of you that don't know what a Balakov is, you take your longest ice screw, which is about 22 centimeters, and you drill it in at a 45-degree angle, and then once you get good at it, it's easy, but you drill it in another 45-degree angle the other way, and they meet, and you've got this corner of ice, and you can do a naked V thread, and you put your rope through it, or you take a piece of cord, and then you put a piece of cord through, and you tie a knot, and then you put your rope off of that, and then you rappel off of that.
So do you have to, like, is it all extractable, or you leave the screws?
Oh, the screws come with you because the leader climbs up, places the
Okay.
screws, and then the second comes behind and cleans all the screws.
I see. So you go.
So it's all, yeah. Unless you're rappelling on that a Balakov and you leave like a little piece of cord, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, you are leaving a little bit of garbage. So, but the naked V thread is totally doable, and I've done that in the past. I tend not to, I might do that more on the last rappel. Usually, I always worry that if you're doing 4 rappels in a row, I'm like, you keep doing these naked V threads, if the rope gets stuck,
You're
like,
running it over ice.
yeah, but
I know,
it
but I
just
mean,
it seems like
it would
as you,
probably melt a little and just make a nice
yeah.
little groove and just hum along. Or does it even melt?
No, 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 and it's more usually the worry when if the water's running, it'll refreeze before
Oh,
you
right.
finish. And so then the rope's frozen in the ice. And then ideally you try to make your V thread off to the side or something like that. But like all kinds of factors. And there's nothing more annoying than when your rope gets stuck and you have to climb back up and you're like, oh, I think I'm done. And then you're like, no, you're not done. You got another hour and a half here at least. Or you're leaving your rope behind and you're going to go buy a new one tomorrow and beg somebody with beer to bring it back to you. So
Interesting. So it's a static tie off that you can release, right?
yeah, like you tie 2 ropes together. So
Okay.
like usually we operate off of 70-meter
Yeah.
ropes. So rappels most of the time are about 210
Yeah.
feet going down. And depending on the size of the climb, right? Various. A lot of them in the Rockies are multiple like 100-meter
Yeah.
climbs.
Yeah.
So you end up doing multiple rappels down them.
Wow.
It's fun. I've been doing it like soon. I'm going to be approaching on like 3
Wow.
decades. Like in 4 or 5 years, I've been ice climbing for like 30 years, which is it blows my
So does
mind.
it do you feel that it has aided you or helped you in your tree climbing?
Hmm. I mean, outside of getting me into it, I'd say a little bit, but it's not. It's definitely different. You know, tree work is mainly like work positioning off a rope, and ice climbing is never. It's like you're climbing up, and then going above your screw, and then you're continually like. I don't ever feel like I'm gonna fall when I'm tree climbing. Like I'm just hanging off
Right.
the rope, and I may have a swing or something. Usually they're on purpose because I'm trying it for fun. And when you're ice climbing, like there's the real hazard that you could fall and hurt
Right.
yourself. And so it doesn't really translate. I've never had like a helmet fire when I'm tree climbing, and I've had them in the past when I'm ice climbing.
Helmet fire?
So hey, when you're freaking out,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, you're having a freak out. You're like, oh my god, I'm in way over my head. Oh, you may be up on this ice wall and you're like 70, 80 meters, 100 meters on this face, and then all of a sudden like yeah, you don't have your confidence, or or maybe you're getting tired, and it's not my term. I've heard somebody call it that, and I'm just like, that is the perfect term, because I've had multiple of these, and you're literally just having a freak out, and sometimes you just got to sit there and just take a moment and be like, is this real? Like, should I be worrying about this? Like, am I tired? Am I pumped out? And if I'm not, then I'm just no, just carry on. Like,
Yeah.
but there's been times in the past where I have been too tired, and like I've had to just like, no, I can't do this today. Like, and I've had multiple days where I'm like, I can't climb this today. Like, or I'm trying to push my limits a little bit, and I get in a bit over my head, and I'm like, I don't do that anymore now. I've learned my lesson. I almost fell off once, and literally scared the hell out of myself, and yeah, and now if I even think that I'm remotely out of my element, I'm like, no, let's pack it in, and either try another day, or work on my fitness so I can do this. So yeah, that would have been. Hey, it would be funny. That's like another life moment where like I probably never would be a tree climber if that had happened. If I'd fallen off the wall that day, I don't think I'd ever climb again. Like I would have been so scared. Like I would have taken probably a 60-foot fall. I may have died.
So this happened
Um,
early in your ice climbing career.
yeah, when I was probably about 25, I was climbing a grade 5 climb, which is basically like a just straight dead vertical climb. It's the Weeping Wall, so I mean it's pretty famous if you ever drive in the Parkway in the winter. Um, and I was probably about 100 meters on the wall on the second pitch. And the golden rule of ice climbing is never, like, rock climb, you can climb into a pump and you can be like, oh, I'm gonna fall off, and you fall off and it's no big deal, because you don't have any ice axes or sharp points on your feet, and usually when you fall ice climbing, your crampons catch the wall and then they snap your legs,
Ah.
and it's bad. And so I was climbing, and I wasn't strong enough to do it, and I just didn't know any better, that I should have just plugged a screw in the wall. At the time I thought it was bad form to hang off a screw, and one day I asked a guide, and he said, it's bad form?
Falling.
Falling off the wall. Do whatever you need to do to not fall off that wall. And so, I was like, okay, well, that makes really good sense. And I don't know where I got that idea from, but I just, after that, I was like, oh, shit, if I got to hang off a screw, I just put a screw in and hang off of it. And, either I carry on, or, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just out of my element. I reevaluate. And, but this was back in the day when they still, like, ice axes still had leashes. And I was probably about 7 or 8 meters, yeah, maybe 7 meters. So above my last screw, which is like maybe 20 feet, not too crazy far, but farther than I probably should have been going. And I was getting super tired, and my arms were getting pumped out, and both my feet blew out of the wall, and then my right axe popped out, and I didn't have any grip left in my left hand, and I landed on basically the leash, and that was the only thing holding me on the wall, and I would have probably fallen about 60 feet. And wow, you want to, like when I'm climbing, people are like, "Oh, do you get adrenaline?" I'm like, "No, I'm generally always like super calm." That was a shot of
Yeah,
adrenaline.
you
Like
think?
I was not tired anymore. In just like insane. I got both my axes in the wall, and I was almost at this ledge, and I said to myself, "Okay, you need to like get your act together here." And I got a screw in right away, so I was good. I was safe, and then I just said, "Okay, there's like, yeah, I think it was like 10 feet to ledge." I said, "Okay, one more screw," and I'm like, and just go, and just get to that ledge." And I made it, and I think I sat there for an hour,
Wow.
and I was just like, because I still had another pitch to go, and my buddy at the time didn't lead, so I still had another grade 5 pitch to do, and I was like, I need to just collect myself, like I can't, yeah, and but like I don't think, I mean, outside of like, maybe some good safe practices in mountaineering, like, just checking your stuff, and it doesn't really translate too much to, I mean, maybe like a little bit of like, the hand movements if you're rock climbing probably helps with tree climbing, but I don't think it fully translates because one's kind of hanging off a rope and positioning
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
really well, and the other ones, it's different,
The
but
rope's just there to
it doesn't hurt. I
catch if
mean,
you fall
yeah,
and
yeah,
to lower yourself
and
down.
well, it also probably helps with confidence too. Like you spend a lot of time at heights. You get confident at it, and you're like, I'm just at home here. So I think there's that aspect, but I don't think
You
it
have a bit of a
totally trans.
different like there's a bit of a more of a magnitude though. There's not that often you're quite that high on a tree. There's the odd one, but that's you're exceeding your altitude potential in when you're doing that.
In trees, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some big sequoias or redwoods that get like over 300 feet, but I mean that's only 100
Yeah.
meters, and that's like not a very big ice climb to me. I'm like, I think that's, a moderate one. I'm like, I'll go out and do that in the morning and be back, in time for lunch if I
Right.
want. Well, especially if I'm up at 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So, but
So
yeah,
is there is what's the obviously like you talked about physical fitness. I think there's a certain amount of mental fitness too, like having that ability. Like you don't just get comfortable at heights right away. But what else do you draw from it? Do you ever think about that? Like, is there a introspective aspect to it, or I don't know if the right words, maybe spiritual or personal, like like that you. I mean, you've been doing something 30 years. There's probably more to it than just exercise.
oh yeah, I mean, for me, going climbing is it's about friendship as well. Like I mean, I've got several good climbing partners that I go with, and it's not even, it's about the climb, but it's about hanging out too and just having a good time. Like, we're making fun of each other, and then, like there's something about doing something, super hard together too, and then like, it grows you. Like it's definitely a challenge. Like I'm not going a lot of times now anymore to like, I'll still do these climbs, but I'm not going to the climb that's right next to the road. Like sometimes I'm going 3 hours, hiking with a 30-pound pack, and then doing like, 200-meter climb, and so it takes a lot, and then you got to have a good partner, and then you're belaying each other, so it's important to pay attention. You're holding his life in your hands, right? And yeah, and then a lot of people talk about flow when you're climbing. Like, I don't worry about work or the business or the bills. I'm just like, I'm just there in that moment, climbing that wall. And I mean, I think I've gotten with tree work, I think I've just been doing it for too long. Like that part of my brain doesn't seem to turn off sometimes when I'm still doing tree work. I'll be like, ah, shit, I got to phone this person. I'm in the middle of doing a rig or something like that. And I'm like, you know, I mean, if I'm in a rush, maybe it turns off then, or if I'm really focused. But it seems like that part can still stay on while I'm doing tree work versus nowadays where I'm like, if I'm out climbing, I'm like, no, I'm focused on the ice or I'm focused on the rock. But I mean, it's mainly about, I think, getting out and having with your friends, and and having that experience, like, because it's hard to describe, I would say,
Well, do you think that if it was, like I'm sure there's people that, are guides or, that where it becomes like a job, you do it, like if you were to invert your time in trees versus your time on ice. If you were on ice as much as you're on trees, do you think that would switch over time?
I think it might, yeah. Yeah, I do. I think, especially because, like, when I first started, I had some guides that took us out on ice climbs, and they were easier climbs now. Like, when I look back, I'm like, oh, this is easy. And I'm like, yeah, this would be autopilot for the guide. Like, it's I mean, that's like going for a stroll for regular people, these climbs for them, And yeah, I could see that. I could 100%. He'd be probably just be like, "Oh, this guy's so goddamn slow," and he'd be like, "I gotta upload this person, and he should be faster, and then this is an easy climb." And like, I could see it. Yeah, 100%. For sure.
That whole
Yeah,
thing of a
yeah.
repetitive complacency, it's like, and that's where again that mental discipline comes in, right? Or having the ability to, get out of the monkey mind, is the, get out of your all the thoughts in your head that are distracted from what it is actually right in front of you. And what used to be really exciting and cool has become a little mundane, a little less interesting, and then and to be able to have the discipline to put your brain back into that. Whereas on a 100-meter pitch, and your ice axe slips a little, you get drawn into the moment pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And yeah, I think. What was I gonna say? Um, going back to like that early stages too, like, somebody always told me, like, you start off your climbing career with two bags, and one's a bag of luck, and one's a bag of experience. And the goal is to fill your bag of experience without emptying your bag of luck. And I definitely threw a little bit of luck out that day, and put it into my experience bin. But that's been, one thing that's always, like, I learned from that I'm like, okay, don't do that again. And for years actually after that, I really dialed back my climbing, and just did some easier stuff until I was able to build it back up. And like, I'm not getting on anything like that, because I almost hurt myself really bad. So, and I've had friends that have hurt themselves. And like, one of my good friends was out climbing in Thunder Bay, and I wasn't there on that trip, but he fell and broke both his legs, and needed like 13 surgeries. He almost lost his leg. He still walks, and but doesn't climb very much. And as he gets older, he's older now. He's about 10 years older than me, I think. And yeah, and it's just rough now, because he mangled his legs. Like, we call him shark bite, because like, they had to take part of his leg and then put it on his ankle, so it looks like a shark bit part of his leg off.
Really?
So yeah, yeah,
So
it's
it's
crazy.
because of how severe the break is. Is that why?
Yeah, I think they had to, like, one of his bones almost died, and if they did that, they were gonna have to fuse, and then his tendons were all mashed. They transplanted like muscle, like me, like, we're not talking small surgeries. It was crazy. And for Tony, it was kind of funny. I'll tell you a story. I was flying to Colorado to go ice climbing, and I was just sitting. This is before phones and all our iPads and stuff, so you couldn't sit there in your stupid device. You had to just, whatever, be alone with your thoughts, or read a book or whatever. And this guy asked me, next to me, he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" And "Oh, I'm going ice climbing in Ouray and around there." And "Oh, wow, that sounds dangerous." And it can be if you fall. And I said, "Yeah." And I told him about my buddy, and he goes, "Well, how much did that cost?" And I was like, "It's free." It, his head just blew up. Like, he could not comprehend. Like, 13 surgeries free. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And he's like, "You'd be bankrupt here." And it was kind of funny. It was like, well, okay, yeah, maybe it would be, but yeah, he was free, and he was like, he just couldn't comprehend it. He goes, "Well, don't fall." And I was like, "I don't intend to," but you know?
Yeah, I guess there is that aspect too. What you mentioned about you got sharp, pointy things like ice axes and crampons. Is it because you actually tried it? Like it would be instinctual, I would imagine, to try to stop yourself, but you're probably better off not to do that, or does it just catch because you're flailing?
You just catch. You usually, depending upon like what you're climbing to, like ice will have natural like rumbles too. So usually, unless you're climbing like, and there are climbs that are just dead vertical for a long time, but usually at some point there's a bulge or a bump, and that's what you hit with your legs, and then that's what breaks them usually. Or yeah, like just something. But you when you fall too, like you don't have any time to react. It just happens, and then you're just falling, and then 2 seconds later your legs are broken. That's it, pretty much. Like it's very very fast. Yeah, I've caught a fall in my past, and I was like, that was really quick. Like it just, yeah, and just
Well,
so.
I mean, anyone that's
uh
fallen, I think, would probably agree with that uh, rendition. It's like it happened so
yeah,
fast.
yeah, like it happened so fast, and then you're like you're trying to even think and figure out how it happened, and like no, it just happened, and
Yeah,
that's it. And yeah,
yeah.
it bonkers. So, but yeah,
And I guess rock climbers
I,
don't have that just because they don't have the grabbing. They obviously they get hurt still, but it wouldn't be the damage isn't as severe.
no, no, and you can get hurt rock climbing for sure, but it's not. You can push yourself to fall off. That's generally how you get better in rock climbing, because like you get your low grade angle stuff where you start climbing off, and then as it gets harder, the holds seem to get just smaller, and so to get stronger, you have to push yourself on these smaller holds and like build it like oh, I'm gonna hold on with my two fingers, and or one finger or your pinky finger, who knows? And I'm not that good, or I suck at rock climbing. Like I'm not very good. I go because I like get to go out in the summer with my friends, and my wife is gracious enough to let me go now. So and but yeah, it's you push yourself to get a little bit better. And I just kind of try and stick to the things that I'm like I can get up. And I've been going with a couple of guys that I work with now. They're really into rock climbing, so I've gone out in the summer. They're getting better than me, and yeah, I think they've always been better than me. Let's just say that. And soon I'm going to be like, you're going to have to set up a haul system if we start climbing things harder. We'll be able to get up this. So like or I'm honestly gonna be like, you guys are gonna have to go on your own. I can't come with you. So something along that lines.
I'll be the
Yeah, I don't
photographer
know.
and I'll make lunch on the ground. Um, I think
Yeah.
we'd be remiss if we didn't, just to let everyone know how hardcore of ice climber you are. Uh, Tell us what a couple winters you endeavored to do in your own backyard. I mean, the first time I heard this
This is
story,
more than a
I've
couple.
told lots of people about it just because it's just not something you hear about every day.
Is more than a couple winners.
Okay.
It was when my eldest or second daughter was born. She's 15 now, and I made a couple two winners in a row. I made an ice tower in my backyard, and it was it's just because I wanted to be able to climb in my backyard because I was home more with my youngest daughter, and just wanted to be around more, and going to the tower, which isn't far in the city. Just took time away, and I was like, I can actually be in the backyard. I can just go do a few laps whenever I want. But it was funny. My daughter was barely one, and finally just started sleeping through the night, and I built this like janky would be a good description of what I built. It's literally just like not even plywood. It was 2x4s, like just screwed together, and then snow fence on it. And then at the time I had three massive cottonwoods in my backyard, and one big branch went out over, and it was probably about 40 or 50 feet high. And I set up a spray bar off top of that, and I would just hang it down off ropes, and I had it hooked to the hose. And it took about 7 days to ice this thing down, 24 hours a day. And I would just move it around all day. And I'm off in the winter, right? So I can do dumb things like this. And yeah, I would spray this thing down, and then I just climb on it in the winter, and But it drove my wife nuts because uh, I would wake up at 3 in the morning because I had to check on it probably about every 4 or 5 hours. I couldn't just let it sit, otherwise it would freeze up. And so I get up at 3 in the morning and go outside and like be banging ice off this thing and set an alarm and wake my wife up, and she'd be like, "We finally get to sleep through the night, and what the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, yeah, just yeah. But yeah, I did it two. I did 2 winters in a row, and the first one I built a smaller one, and the second winter I ended up building this. It's probably like 35 or 36 feet high. I could stand on the top, and it was higher than my house. We have a 2-story house by quite a bit, actually, and you could see it from the street. And nobody ever came and gave me shit or anything. Like I never had anybody like bylaw officer come by and be like, "What the hell is this?" And neighbors never said anything. I just went and did it. I didn't even ask. And nobody said anything. They just whatever, and it would literally flood like my one neighbor's backyard at the back of his lot. And he didn't care. He just thought it was cool, and he just watched me climb on it.
How long would it take something
So
like that to melt to back to nothing?
I had to knock it down. Like I would knock it. I'd have to knock part of it down because it would like smash my deck or hot tub if it fell over
Yeah.
completely. So I'd have to go up like in the spring and then just like sit there and kick at it and knock all this ice off until it was at least halfway. Otherwise, it would totally like fail and fall, and then I'd be like, "Well, I can't call insurance for this." They'd be like, "What happened?" "Oh, my janky ice tower that I built in my backyard fell on my hot tub, and now I'd like you to replace it." "You're what?"
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I couldn't do that. And but yeah, so I'd have to knock half it down. But I would think if I just let it sit and melt, it'd easy last probably like into early May, I would think.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a fair amount of ice on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I remember it was in the winter and I was driving on. I was up in. It was. I think it was a small town and on the way to Edmonton, on the 2A, the secondary highway, and off in the distance I could see this thing. And as I got in, it was a tree that was completely covered in ice. And what had happened is something had broke, a water thing had broke, like water main, and it shot water up all night, right? And it was full winter, -30, and it just froze this 30-foot. It just covered the spruce tree, and it was like a solid ice tree. It was wild looking, and
I would have been
I took
climbing it.
pictures of it and stuff. But it was a fail of some type, and it just sat there till it melted in the spring. But I never did go watch it melt. But I just when I think of your janky tower, I think of that tree, and it was just fascinating. And when I worked at the nursery in Saskatoon in the fall, because we'd water everything in good, so we'd have the irrigation running, and this time of year, getting like we'd shut her down around end of October, mid October. We'd be out there as long as we could, and we'd come in the mornings and we'd have the irrigation running all night, and it would freeze, and it would just cover everything in ice, and the sprinklers would still be going, but the outer edges and stuff, and then and we just turn it off and move it, and by noon it would have melted off, right? But it was quite
Yeah.
amazing looking, like all the ice coated branches and everything. It's pretty cool. That probably happens around the base of those waterfalls a little bit, huh?
Yeah, oh, there's always kinds of cool features and just yeah, you get some wild stuff too. Like if you go like Thunder Bay, they'll get some windy areas, so like you'll have like huge curtains forming and all kinds of really neat stuff like that'll just happen with wind action over time, and it makes for neat climbing as well. Climbing around them or trying to climb over them or all kinds of neat things like that.
Well, thinking about risk assessment that we do in tree work, I mean, there must be some of that, like, and I've heard of, there's like identifying ice that's rotten versus not, and like that's obviously a skill that would be, you might learn it out of your bag of tricks or out of your bag of experience or a little both, right?
Oh, 100%. Like there's, a lot of climbs are in avalanche hazards, and you can go climb wherever you want. Nobody's saying no. And you have to do your own level of risk assessment. There was you guys might find this interesting. A guy I climbed with back in the day, and I only climbed with him once. I just asked him to go out. He moved out to the Rockies, and I had nobody to climb with that day, and I just emailed him out of the blue, or I think emailed, maybe Facebook. Maybe Facebook was a thing back then. But anyways, he lived in Manitoba, so I think I'd met him in the past and said, "Hey, can we go climbing? I don't have a partner today." And he was at the time he kind of stopped ice climbing a lot and was more into mountaineering. And he asked me a really interesting question because I told him I was a tree guy, and he goes, "Do you think, with the exposure to your job over time, it's inevitable that you will have an accident?" And I was like, I thought no, because I'm like, because he was kind of comparing it to mountaineering. And I said, well, I don't have factors that are outside of my control too much, as much as mountaineering. Like, you've got avalanches, you've got tiredness. I mean, you do have tiredness in tree work, but maybe not the same as like mountaineering. If you're like 3 hours in the car and you're exhausted, you don't like you got to get back to the car. um but I was like, I thought about it over time, and I was like, like maybe, because there is complacency. What do you guys think about that?
Well, that is, and I think I've heard that, it's sort of like I it stands to reason that the odds would increase the longer you do something, right? Like, it's just the likelihood of something happening. However, I've also had that challenge before too, and I don't know, Tony, you might know more about this than I do, but it makes sense to me. But I've also heard someone give me a different form of logic about it, and um, because it's interesting, because the accidents seem to happen in the younger group and then in the older group. And is
Mm-hmm.
it
Yep.
complacency or is it just your time? Sorry, Tony, I was gonna.
John Ball.
Yeah.
John
Well,
Ball,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Said that. Yeah. And yeah, what do you think, Tony?
When you look at the average age of the injured arborist, it tends to be older. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that's because we break, we don't bend.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when I was 20 and fell off the ladder, it was a funny story and a sore ankle. When I'm 50 and I fall off the ladder, it's trip to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's part of it. I think I would disagree that I think having some type of incident, I don't wouldn't say inevitable. Like, you're going to have problems on job site. What I find is that crews that prepare, the consequences tend to be less. So fortune favors the prepared. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in tree work, the thing about tree work is you can always just not choose not to do it, right? Like, you don't have to take the risk. It's just a tree. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if you go in with that mindset and control all the factors you can, are things going to happen? Sure. Are you going to get bumps and bruises? Sure, absolutely. But I don't think it's inevitable that you're going to get a serious injury or die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're going to get your bumps and bruises. That's the way it is. But I don't think that frequency initiates severe injury anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what do you think in the mountain world,
Yeah.
Tony? Do you think it's different there because of, like, when you said, Rob, that there's less factors within your control, and I've always felt there are quite a bit in the tree work that are out of our control. That's where planning helps put them to some degree within our control, but the scope of control certainly would be broader, I think, in the outdoor realm.
yeah, I would say with outdoor pursuits, there's so much that's out of your hand. You can't control weather.
Yeah.
There's so many things. I mean, now of course you don't have to go, but assuming you're going to take the risk. I mean, you look, the most hazardous profession is commercial fishing.
Yeah.
What they do isn't that hazardous, it's where they work,
Yeah.
right? Like pulling baskets and getting up nets. Not that it's not hard work, it's not gritty work, but it's not that fraught with danger, right? It's their conditions that they can't control. And I think the true is of outdoor pursuits is very true. There's so much you can't. Whereas tree work, I don't have to work in the lightning storm. I don't have to work at, I
Well,
can
you can
manage
you can
a lot of
evade the
those other
storm, like
things.
you can get shelter from the storm if you're on a. I mean, I guess they could choose not to be on deck working in the 10-foot seas and frozen ice chunks in the water and whatever all that happens, but they still have to be on the water.
Yeah.
It's not like you
But
can go
it's
inside, but your boat's still out there getting hammered, and then if it does go down, you're all going down, right?
I think it's the remoteness too, right? Like, if they get hurt out there, like, tough, for any help. Like if you're in the city, and you get hurt, okay, chances are like an ambulance can be there right
Yeah.
away, or you're in the middle of the Bering Sea, shooting your show or whatever, and you get smoked in the head by one of those crab pods and your skull's caved in. Like, okay, where's the ambulance?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a helicopter flight of 2 hours from here to there, and I'm like, his head's pushed in.
Yeah.
Like, like the chances of living are, I guess maybe quite significantly
Well, even
less.
getting in the
But
chopper if it got there.
yeah, if it got there, yeah, like so it was just I thought it was an interesting question, and I was like, no, I think I always thought that I'm like, no, I think there's much less of a chance that I would be injured over time doing tree work as long as I'm staying
Right.
vigilant and like Tony said, being prepared. You know, yeah, just doing those things and then just not you know doing poor practices,
I
right?
heard an interesting thing this on the week. I guess it was Thursday. Uh, Someone said it's not it's not uh, preventing or thinking that something won't happen or planning so something doesn't happen, which you obviously should do, but it's your response plan that's the most critical. That you know what to do if or when. And that's
Mm-hmm.
your best defense for what might happen is, kind of, what planning for it and then what are you going to do about it and knowing what to do. And in that you
Mm-hmm.
fulfill diligence as best you can in that way. I thought that was interesting. It's not what you do, it's how you plan, how you respond. It's not what happens, it's how
Yeah.
you respond.
Yeah, yeah, and in the city it seems easy because you're like, oh, I just phone the ambulance. I'm like, I know where I am, phone the ambulance, know the address. Okay, it's not that hard. But I mean, you get other places like this guy was talking about, and in his response, it was like he had broken his arm mountaineering, and he was like in the middle of nowhere, and like this is before, I don't know if you're aware now, they have these like things called
Yeah,
spot
in
devices.
reach.
So like now it's a satellite. Yeah, in reach. Yeah, I've got one of those. So like, now, and I'm not sure. I think they're great, but people are hitting them now for like, I'm thirsty or whatever,
Yeah.
right? Apparently. So, it should only be used in an emergency. But this is before that, I believe, and like he had to like walk out with a severely broken arm, and he was like, I don't know, like 12 hours or something from his car.
Yeah.
Crazy. So and then it was just a random. He slipped and like yeah, and he was mountaineering. I think he was just and then fell on a rock and broke his arm. I think was what it was. But yeah, just an interesting kind of thought. And I was like, and I was like, I don't know. I don't think I feel that way. That I answered no in that question.
I think when you take a really good look at the incidents that result in severe injury and fatality in arboriculture, very rarely is it this complex thing. They're not like Peter Dunzelli's accident at all. I mean, something glaringly obvious is missed. Like a guy falls out of a tree because he's not
Yeah.
tied in. Or if he's tied in, he cut his rope. Or you fall out of an aerial lift because you're not using fall protection. So many times when you look at these fatalities, like the great
Yeah.
majority of them, it's so glaringly obvious it's preventable. Like
Yeah.
no hard hat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which means the work practices aren't good. So no hard hat probably means they don't have a call response system. I mean, it was just a matter of time until the log hit somebody on the
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
And just so that you have to take it a lot with a grain of salt. And like I said, if you have a tree crew or a crew that prepares, then they're doing those things, and the obvious, gets it's pretty simple to tie into a tree and not fall out of it, right? Like
Yeah.
pretty simple, like it's pretty simple not to cut your climbing line. It's this isn't Einstein work here.
Yeah. For
Well,
sure.
Rob, have you felt, you talked about the helmet fire and you mentioned you've never had one doing tree work. Like, have you had anything compare like to, like where you are hanging off a lanyard on the axe? Like, have you ever experienced anything even close to that doing tree work, do you think?
I've done a couple back in the day. I did, I've done a couple like really scary dead trees, and I would say like been like scared doing them, but not, and like one in particular, I remember I did this. It was probably a 70-foot ash tree on the river, or not ash, basswood. And like I tied into the elm next to it, but I was climbing up and I was like, at this point, like my spurs were just sinking into nothing. Like it was mush. And the top was like spaghetti and moving around. And I was like, yeah, I can't go any higher. I'm topping this. And it was a pretty big top. And that was probably the closest thing I could think of. And there's one other one that I climbed that was dead. And now, you know what? Now I haven't had, like, I've never really refused to do like a job. I've been able to figure a way around it. And I think, as times go on, like when I took your courses and stuff like that, you talk about your toolbox.
Yeah.
It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think my toolbox was enough back in those days, that I ended up putting myself in those situations where I became scared. And I would have, like, that swing into that elm, I had that thing broke, and I kind of like made a breakaway like
Yeah.
lanyard, so it would break if it was under pressure. Like it would have been like this 30-foot swing like into the tree. Like it would not have been good
Yeah.
for me. Like I at the time I was still pretty young, so I don't think I would have broke, but I probably would have needed to change my shorts.
Yeah.
Like, and but yeah, and then I just took this huge top, and like I was like by the river. I think I just dumped it right in the river. Like, and we had to fish it out after, and just like but now I would have done something different. Who knows what I might have said, what? Oh, we'll wait till winter and then we'll just fell it.
Yeah.
Like that would have never occurred to me, right? Like just anything, like the little things like that. And then it's funny, like it ended up being super rotten when I topped it. And then as we got lower, the whole middle of there was only like an
Yeah.
inch, and probably about 20-foot column of just
Yeah.
hollowness,
Yeah.
rotten, and only an inch of live wood around. So the tree was just structurally toast. Had I tried to rig anything off of it, it would have been horrible. And good thing I knew enough probably not to do that. But yeah, and you know what? Helmet fires have mostly gone away for me since I don't drink anymore. So I think
Interesting.
I think back in the day, helmet fires may have been a result of being slightly hungover. Part of the in my climbing days
Just
back in the
because you
day.
couldn't think,
So
like you had a sort of a brain fog, you think, or what would be the?
I would say brain fog, and then just not feeling your
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
I part of the climbing was you go out and have beers after, and then over time, I got out of shape because of that. And I still kept climbing, and my climbing just kind of got worse, and especially as you get older too. You know, you could go out and drink beer every day after work when you're in your 30s,
Yeah.
and you don't gain any weight. You're fine. You're like, oh, this is no problem. And now I'm almost 50, and over the years too, we've become way more mechanized. So like we've got a loader, we've got a
Right.
crane. Like the days of like drag and brush all day, like they're not really there anymore. Like we get on heavy jobs, it's like, oh no, get the loader, and it just lifts everything. And so like all of a sudden, like if you're drinking beer, you're getting fat. So yeah, I quit and lost 30 pounds, and so the climbing's been better. And then like yeah, I feel great, and I'm like, the confidence is pretty much always there. And I think that amount of drinking beer and climbing, you end up with a helmet fire because you're slightly hungover, and you're doing something hard, like and with consequences. And so I think that would create the fires, because I don't feel very good, and I'm trying to do this hard thing. I don't, you think that you would just be like, no, I'm not gonna drink, tonight. But no, I would go out and do it anyways. You know.
Well,
So
so good for you for having the maturity to observe that and then to act on it. Some of us needed to learn a little, maybe hit a little harder in the head to figure that out.
it took me a while, Dwayne. yeah, it took a while for me to figure it out. So,
Me too.
but I got there. Yeah, yeah. But and it's been great. My climbing has been better. Work's been great since then. Way more organized. Everything's much
Do you
better.
think it had any
You know.
impact on your relationships as well, like interacting with people?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, you're clear headed every day. It's better. I'm showing up every day, clear headed. Uh, it's funny. I joke and uh, it's almost been 2 years now, and we have an estimator this year, but last year, man, I was on fire in the sales, just on fire, and I was like, maybe it's because you're not hungover on the weekends, and I just showing up, and I'm like, I am just my talk is on fire, like everything, selling these huge jobs, and I'm like, never used to do this, and I do think it was like because a lot of times I would do estimates on Saturday, Sunday. Like
Right.
I've been like mostly 7 days a week for all these years. Especially in the summer, and now we have an estimator again. I've got my weekends off, yeah, I think last year I was like I am just on fire, and I'm like I think and my spiel was good, like showing up and I'm talking and I'm like this is and I'm like, I think it's partly because of this,
Yeah.
and more apt to just be like, I'd rather, back in the day, I'd be like, I'd rather be sitting on my couch, I'm tired, and
Right.
so
Yeah. It took me. It was something I didn't want to admit, I guess, or I didn't think when I look back on it, it really was something that I didn't want to acknowledge. I was almost, well, I was in denial that it was having an impact like that. So then, therefore, it almost made me do it more out of defiance, sort of thing, until, it really started to come to bear, and I had to make some tough decisions. And then, as time passes, you get more clarity. You get it just, and you think back. Finally, I can look back now, and it's like I just wouldn't I just genuinely don't want to ever go back to that way. And I don't begrudge anybody. I had a great career. I had to retire. I was such a good drinker. I had to retire. I was pro.
the drink, yeah, the drinking
and
career,
and
yeah,
but I would
yeah,
never go back to play in the BHL, right? Like I couldn't do it. Like imagine after like Gretzky goes back on the ice and thinking he just get demolished, right? He can probably still skate really
well,
good though, but like maybe not for long, right?
it, there was a lot of factors for me, and I had just doing a lot of dumb things, and I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and um, and then also with the sale of the company going on, and um, you had the sale. I remember I went on a climbing trip to Wyoming, and at the time I was overweight and still drinking, and I was there with my buddy. I just climbed really poorly, and I felt like I let him down. He was all stoked about it, and we didn't do anything really that great, and it was just because I was like too fat to climb, and I'm just like, holy, like I'm like when the trip was done, I was like, well, that sucked, and it was your fault, and I'm
Wow.
like, you're too fat to do this, and too out of shape, and yeah, and it was just like that in itself sucked, and then I'm like, okay, and now I've got the sale of this company, and it needs to go well, and you can't be drinking tall boys every day after work, and I've got a bunch of stuff that I have to pass on to my successor, and you can't be hungover every day doing that. Like it just, and so there's multiple things, and it's better, I'm better with my wife and better with my kids, and but yeah, it was multifaceted need to just be done,
Was
and
there did was it something that since that she's commented after, like did she know or worry about it at the time, or afterwards go, man, you know what? It's actually, I'm really glad I didn't realize it was having that kind of effect.
I don't know if she knew, if she thought that, but I think she's just, I'm not staying at the shop late after work. We already work late enough. I don't need to be there for another hour and a half drinking tall boys. And doing that like 3 nights a week, right? Like, that's no good. And um, and then you're supposed to be, probably, I guess, I never really look at myself like a, and maybe I should, like a leader or maybe a role model, for other people. I kind of just always looked at myself as a business owner and a tree guy. And, but I have a bunch of young guys working with us, and, um, turning around and drinking too much every night, or, not just setting a good example. And I think, and then, like I said, doing the sale of the company, I'm like, there's too much pressure here that I should be focusing on this and not on that. And critical years, to get these things done, and it's not ideal to be, hungover doing that. And and then I think as you just get older, you just realize, like, yeah, I just don't. You don't feel good doing it. You can do that in your 20s, and you can do that in your 30s, and and then the whole part of the industry sucks you in. Oh, I worked hard today. I can drink a bunch of beers. Well, yeah, and then all of a sudden it just becomes a regular daily thing, and and then eventually it's dragging you down. So yeah, I quit, and it's in this April will be 2 years, and it's been fantastic. So yeah,
Awesome. And I
yeah,
think also, I think there is an age factor to it. I notice even, never mind beer or alcohol, like food, I can't eat like I used to eat either. Like, and it just the weight, it adds up, and also doing some exercise, like you gotta, it isn't as easy to bounce back as it used to be, right? And I've heard the older you get, the harder that is. So it's maintaining. I have a friend, he's 82, and you wouldn't know it. He's very active. I was shocked when I found out he had some trees. He was falling all these trees, and he'd fallen. He has a farm and a shelter belt, and he'd probably dropped 30 of these, 60-foot spruce. Like he was working, and there was some that were just too close to things, and he's like, I need some help with a couple. So I went and dropped 4 or 5 trees with him, and that's when it come out that he's 82. And I mean, he's up there, like he's slinging and bucking. I mean, he didn't do much. He'd enough to hook a chain. He would drag him to a bush pile with his tractor and stuff. But I mean, he's hooking chain onto logs, dragging trees, slinging a saw at 82. And I was like, holy. And I asked him, what, I had no idea. I knew he was older than me, but I didn't think he was that old. And he's like, Dwayne, you got to do something every day. You got to stay active. And he too quit drinking completely. And he's like, it just, between that and just staying active, he said, like, and he said, if I get hurt or if I got to take even a week off, he said, it takes me like 3 weeks to get back to where I was. So it's just a little bit every day and staying clean. He said it makes a huge difference. Your diet and what you're putting in you, their bodies, you're polluting the temple.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Food is thy
Yep,
medicine,
yep,
right?
yep. And it
So
magnifies as you get older,
yeah,
and I don't know if there's a way. I think I remember hearing this as a younger person, but it's like my ears didn't really open until, later in life, unfortunately. And if there was any way to inspire or mentor it to people, like you said, like at least not doing it, at least, well, maybe that's what happened for us. There was the old guys that stopped, and now we're them too. I don't know how it works.
yeah. I mean, I think you just get to your time, and you're like, well, I've had enough of
Yeah.
this, and but it's been good, and yeah, I've got no complaints. I don't think I could go back. I think about it every once in a while and be like, oh, a beer would be really nice, but I would need to have 10 or 12 of these, and then my wife would be mad, and she used to call me 2 or 20. So, that was my nickname.
Yeah.
So, it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna have two tonight, or if I
Yeah.
have more than two, that's we're going the
I think
distance.
that's the key to
So,
it too, was for me, it was realizing that once I start, I can't really stop until, I have to, because of either being so tired or inebriated or whatever, right? Or out. And I
yeah, you
can't go
pass
get
out.
more
Yeah,
no matter what. And that's where it's like,
yeah,
that's a little bit, that's not, not everybody does that, right? And that was where, and accepting that, and that, I like that, 2 or
hmm
20, the saying I often heard is one is too many and a thousand's never enough.
yeah.
Which it's but in the job we do, and climbing, and we like, I don't know, I think there's a connection to those of us that enjoy tree work, climbing, mountain climbing, rock climbing, ice climbing. There's elements, skydiving you can throw in there, all of this stuff that we like, and then somehow alcohol fuels that or gets part of that. But as we get older, it actually distracts from it. I think for some of us, like, I think that's what we've experienced. It's interesting.
Well, and I want to keep doing this stuff too.
Exactly.
So for me, it was like, okay, I am not doing as well, like in my job. Like I'm not a big guy. I'm only like 5'10". Like I came back from the TCIA at one point, and I was like 211 pounds. I'm like, that's way too heavy. Like my gut was hanging over my tree harness. I'm like, I can't get out to the. I'm like, I need a pole saw. Like I can't get out here. I think I'm gonna break this branch. Like it's gonna snap under my weight. And so somebody gave me the pole saw, and just like when I'm done in a couple of years, like I don't want to quit doing tree work. I still want to work part time
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it, and then I want to climb well into my 50s and 60s. And but yeah, if I'm in poor health, that's not going to happen, and it's not what I want. And so I had to look at some things and be like, no, I got to start taking better care of myself. And it's hard when you're running a business. You're go 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 all the time. I mean, I'm not traveling around like you are. I'm here. I get to go home every night. And but you put in 12 hours. I'm like, the last thing you want to do is work out. And you're definitely not going to work out if you've had beers after work. That's just not, and especially at my age. I'm like, no, I'm just going to go home and have more beers. And
Yeah.
that'd be my workout. I'll lift a few of these in my mouth, and but yeah, like I just I don't want to be like, oh, it's done when in 2 years, and be like, now I just don't do anything because I'm in poor health. And then looking at, like, those later years of your life, like that guy who's 82. I meet all kinds of people too doing estimates in the day, and I'll meet people that are 90 and they look like they're like
Yeah.
65, and I'm just like, you're 90? And I'm like, get out of here, like, for real. And it blows my mind. And so it's taking care of yourself, and I don't think it's too late, if you've done a poor job for whatever, 10 years or 20 years. I mean, maybe if you're like 70 and you're like, okay, now I'm going to quit, well, maybe it might be a little too late then. But and you've done it since you're 20, well, okay. Or
I
maybe
don't think
not,
so.
maybe
I don't
not.
think
But I
I don't think
mean,
it's ever too late. Never too late to make a change like that. I don't think
yeah,
it's going to have a
and
positive benefit.
I'm just thinking more health
Yeah.
wise, where I'm like, oh, I'm 70 years old, I'm going to turn myself around and be ice climbing
Well,
tomorrow. Probably not.
but you'd
Yeah,
be surprised what
that's what I
might
was
turn
thinking.
around if you
Yeah,
made a big
yeah,
shift, right? They might be able to
yeah,
at least do a lot of walking or square dancing or something, right?
yeah, something, and yeah, I want those later years of my life to be, good quality years. So I think doing that was important. So, and then yeah, and then just trying to be a decent example, like for everybody else that I guess is around me. So, and I didn't take that serious enough over all those years. I don't think so.
Well,
But now I'm trying.
we call
You
it the
know,
Human Forestry Podcast, and that moniker is partly, and this, for whatever reason, it just popped into my head. Like old trees, don't bend like young trees. Old, they also change shape and size, and they adapt to accommodate their age and their surroundings, right? And I think there's an example there. And I so often think there's so many examples in trees, how they interact with each other, how they deal with defects and wounding and injuries. You can take that into physical or even into mental or spiritual woundings that we've occurred, and how woundwood builds. And it's just, an old tree changes, and there's examples all over in nature of that sort of thing, right? And I think trees, lots we can learn from that. An 80-year-old tree or an 800-year-old tree doesn't behave like a 100-year-old tree, sort of thing, right? And it doesn't look like one either.
No, definitely not. Yeah, and you're always changing over time, and um, I think it's always, I always try to be better. I don't try to be worse. I mean, you just do the best you can with the things that you had at the time, and I don't look back and try and say, oh, I regret doing all those things. I mean, I had a lot of
Yeah,
fun
yeah, of
times,
course,
but
100%.
and yeah,
Yeah, you
it
don't
is what it
regret
is.
the past, and you don't shut the door on it, right? It's just, you can see how that experience could be used to help others, right? And
Hmm.
that's, you're now sharing your bag of tricks, maybe, or your bag of experience. I like that analogy. That's
Yeah,
really cool. Um, and
yeah,
then the trees don't, the elements don't change. The things that are trying to bring them down, if you want to look at it that way, you got wind that's variable and intermittent. That every once in a while they got to deal with a real good wind blowing on them, and not blow over or break. And then there's gravity all the time. But as they get older, they got to adapt to that, right? So shorter and wider, becomes the modus operandi, but it's responding to that stimulus, right? And doing what they have with what they got, like you said. And it's a great example, I think, to us of something to take into, of course, we don't have the lifespan that most trees have, but we certainly could learn something from them, I think.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And yeah, yeah. I mean, when as things go forward, like I said, I'm not sure what I'll do in retirement. Probably work part time for my successor, and enjoy more of the activities that I like
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And now that I'm good and healthy, like hopefully I can do them for a lot more
I'm sure
years.
you will. I'm sure you
So
will. Well, Tony, do you have any closing questions for our guest today, or any
No,
feedback?
I don't. I don't. I appreciate your patience with me since I'm over here fighting this coughing and wheezing through this head cold. I've been on mute the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
time. So
We Well, thanks for sharing that, because that can help our list. We didn't cut Tony out of this interview. He's got a bit of a sniffle going on, so he's laying low today. Well, we don't have an official end time, Rob, but I think it seems like a natural segue. Bio break and everything else happens, and it's pretty typical. And it's always with you. We're right in the sweet spot where we kind of draw to a natural segue. And but I want to thank you for being on the show, and and thanks for vulnerability. Talking about making a life change like that. Uh, Although does seem like more and more people are waking up to some of the negative effects of particularly alcohol or beer, in particular. But that's kind of a personal thing. So thanks for sharing that as well.
thanks, guys. And you know what? I have to. The crew wanted a shout out in case any of them listen to this, because they always surprise me. And we had a big elm we were removing today, and I said I couldn't be there to help out because I was doing this, and I'm just going to go help the smaller residential crew later when I'm done. But I one of the things I've always tried to do is just with the guys, I'm like, okay, if they're in on the site, they do the tree however you want. You've got we've done enough work together, you got enough training, and big elm, really
Okay.
big. And 9:30 they texted me, and they had felled it, most of
Wow.
it. They only cut like part of it off and just felled the rest. And I was like, we're going to be climbing this all day. And 9:30 it's on the
Nice.
ground. And so they said, give us a shout out on the podcast. So Nice work, guys. So
Hey, that's cool. We've never
yeah.
had a shout out to a crew on the podcast before. That's a first, and that is
Yeah.
awesome. Thanks, Rob, for doing that.
Mhm.
Good job, guys, getting that elm down.
Yep. Awesome.
Now get that brush cleaned up.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm gonna show up at the right time, right when it's all cleaned up, and they're just gonna shake their heads. I know they're
Yeah.
going to. So, yeah. And the only thing I could do better is probably just show up, distract them for 15 minutes, and then say I got an estimate to do or something. They always rib on me for that. They're like, "Oh, you got an estimate or something to do?" I'm like, "No, I'm gonna just stay here and rake." And I'm like, "I'm good at raking." And they're like, "You're not really." So, yeah.
Take them cold drinks. That covers a multitude.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.